Hey there, welcome to the Textile Indie Basketry channel. My name is Brittany and welcome to the second video in our cross-stitch napkin basket series. If you haven't watched the first video, check the description below. You can find the link to that first part where we wove the bottom of the basket. In this video, we're going to go over weaving the walls of the basket. In our online shop, Textile Indie, we do have a corresponding instruction manual that you can purchase to go more in depth into basket weaving and have more information on how to weave this basket. I'll link that in the description below. The first two rows in this basket are going to be 1/2 inch wide flat reed. If you're using the Textile Indie cross stitch napkin basket kit, go ahead and pull the bundle of 1/2 inch wide out. You can undo the bundle and then dunk it in the water. Again, it's just a quick dunk to get it damp. Tap off the excess and pull out one length. When I'm weaving baskets, I don't usually cut the reed ahead of time. I use the full length. This allows you to not waste any reed because you're going to weave around and then cut it to the exact length you need, and then the excess can be used in the next rows. If it's a shorter piece, you can splice it, and I'll go over splicing in another video. One of the reasons I don't pre-cut my rows or my weavers is in order to save reed. Another reason is that if you're weaving your basket and mid-basket you kind of want to change shape, or you want to pull it in more or let it loosen out and become a slightly bigger basket, if you've pre-cut all your rows, then your basket is going to have to be the size of that pre-cut row. It can only be that circumference. You can't make any adjustments. So working with slightly longer pieces or the natural length of the reed pulled from the bundle will allow you some wiggle room to play around with the overall structure of your basket. For this napkin basket, it's fairly basic. We're doing a square into a round opening, and the size doesn't graduate or shift very much. It's pretty straight up and down, maintaining the sides of the basket. But I just like to mention, you don't have to pre-cut your weavers, and I never pre-cut my weavers for this type of weaving project. Now to get started weaving, you're going to take one piece of the 1/2 inch wide and drop the end off to the side or onto the floor so that it's out of your way, and hold the other end. There's a couple ways you can face the basket. You can either tilt it up on one side and work from the outside like this, or set the base up on the table and lift the stakes up. For ease of showing you this on the video, I'm going to prop this up on its side. And remember, we were looking at the inside of the basket when we set up the base, so now we're tilting this up to look at the outside of the basket. Now grab one of your red metal clamps, and we're going to lay this piece of reed on top of the third stake in. So count 1, 2, 3, and clamp this to the outside of that stake. We always start weaving outside of the basket. So put your weaver on top here so that it just comes to the far edge of that stake. Clamp that in place so we can pull on in it and it won't move. And then this is our over. So I'm going to go under the following stake. Go behind that following stake like so. Over, under, over, under. And notice that I'm grabbing the reed right near where I'm working. If you pull like this and you try to thread this underneath, over, underneath, you're gonna have to pull all this length, and you're going to disintegrate the reed. It's going to get roughed up, and the friction of pulling it through is going to be a problem. So try to stay close, kind of choked up near where you're weaving, and then move the stakes out of your way with your hand to do your weaving. When you get to a corner, come in and bring your hand underneath, create a little bit of a crease right along the edge of that corner stake, and continue the pattern. Here I went under, so when I turn, I'm going to go over and then under, and make sure that this crease sits right in the corner. You don't want to pull too hard because then you won't have enough reed, but if you leave too much of a bubble, you're going to end up with a funky corner on this first row. So come in, and you're kind of going for a nice 90-degree between these two stakes. So if you bring them upright next to each other, if your piece of reed sits nice and snug around that corner, then you have good placement. Here I'm going to throw in another clamp to hold that in place at the corner, and then rotate your basket around so you can see the next side you're working on. So I'm under here, now I'm going to go over, and then under, over, under, over, under. Again, we're at a corner, so at this corner, I'm going to come in, create a surface with my fingers to press against. And then this was an under, so I'm going to go over around that corner. Corners can be tricky because you turn and then it's easy to get off pattern. So be sure to be aware how you're turning that corner and what's happening there. Here in this corner, I'm going to put a clamp to hold that in place so it doesn't move on me, and then continue in that over-under pattern, making sure that every other one, it goes under, over, under, over, under, over, under. We'll turn this corner here, go over that corner, and turn. Put another clamp in this corner, like so, and then keep weaving this side. And then create a crease in this next corner, go around this corner, and now we're back to the side we started on. So to get this clamp out of my way so that I can weave over that, I'm going to slide this over here and clamp to this end. So I'm just moving it a bit. And then here, I'm going to throw a clamp in over on this side so that this row doesn't move too much. Turn this corner and weave. And now we're going to do what's called a 4-stake overlap. That's where you go over 4 stakes, overlapping your previous weaving so that this has room to flex. And go over the end, so we're covering the end, behind this second stake, so this is the first, over that end, and then behind the second stake, over the third stake, and then cut to the far edge of this 4th stake over, cut like so that it has that full width. We'll tuck this end behind like so. And now your starting end is right here, tucked behind this guy. Your ending end is right here, tucked behind this stake. And we'll move that clamp right in the middle to hold those two in place so they don't pop out. And that is your 4-stake overlap. We're going to do that on every row. What 4 stakes gives you is the ability for the reed to kind of flex depending on the size of the basket or how you build it without it popping out. If you do less than 4 or it's sticking out, it's going to look kind of janky or pop out and not hold itself together. So go over those 4 stakes, covering that starting end and tucking the ending end for each row you go around. Now this first row, if you look at the inside of your basket, you can see that some of this row is popping out. If you come in and push that down, you can also switch places with your clamp and put the clamps in the middle of the walls instead of in the corners. And this will just readjust things so that this stays where it needs to be. Put 1 clamp per wall in the middle, and this will give you an idea of the tension. You want your reed to be sitting upright so that you have nice corners. If it's flopping down flat on these sides, that's okay. We don't have any tension to pull it up yet. The next row will help to sit that upright. And we have our 4-stake overlap over here where we started and ended. This is a start and stop basket, which means that each time we do a row, we're going to change the reed that we're working with. So you start a row, you weave around, and you end a row. When you do start and stop, this allows you to be able to change the reed that you're working with and change the size or include seagrass or just kind of create a pattern in the wall of your basket. If you did continuous weave, which is another technique, and I have other basket videos on continuous weave, you will continue around in a spiral with the same reed. But continuous weave means that you have to stick with the same type of reed in order to continue and create that spiral. So you end up with just a solid single type of reed. So in order to create our pattern and our design for this basket, we're doing start and stop. Now we have our start and stop where we started and ended on this side. Each time you do a row, come in and rotate your basket a quarter turn in the same direction. It doesn't matter if you go clockwise or counterclockwise, just pick one and stay consistent throughout the weaving of your basket. If you rotate and start and stop on a different wall, then your basket is going to be balanced. You won't have extra thickness on just one side of the basket. It'll be spread out over the entirety of the basket. You'll have a balanced basket, but you'll also have walls that sit nice and snug against the stakes. So we stopped over here. I'm going to rotate a quarter turn clockwise and start and stop over here. So I'm going to grab a second piece of 1/2 inch wide flat reed and start weaving with this guy. On this side, come in, and on the 4th stake in, we're going to put this piece of reed on top and clamp that in place. The reason I'm going on top of this guy is because this previous row, it was going under this stake. So this next row, to do opposites, would be on top. So I'm on top here. Now I'm going to go behind this next stake, like so. So we're creating an opposite of this previous row. Then I go over, under, over, turn the corner, create a little crease as you go around, like so, over, under, and you can move the clamps and replace them if you want to. It's probably a good idea for the first few rows to keep the clamps in place so that your rows don't move on you and you can see what's happening clearly. I turn this corner. The other thing to watch out for is if for some reason your pattern gets off or you're doing the same thing as the previous row, that's indicating that somewhere in the weaving you got off and you're either over 2 or you're under 2, and you need to back up, unweave what you did, and reweave it in the over-under opposite pattern so that you continue the weaving structure and the plain weave. I'm going to move this clamp, put it up here, weave around. So again, don't weave using the end like this and sliding it underneath stakes like that, because you're going to mess up the surface of the reed. If you can come in, grab right near where you're weaving and move the stake out of your way and then pull the reed down, then you'll be able to control it a little bit better. Here again, I'm back to where I started. I'm going to move this clamp to the corner. I'm going to go behind this guy, and then here's my over, so I'm going to cover that with this round of weaving. Cover that, go behind the next one, that's 2, over 3, and then cut it to the far edge of number 4, like so. Tuck this behind, and there I've hidden the starting end under here and the ending end under here. So I'm going to move this clamp back so that it holds those together, and this is my second row of the 1/2 inch wide flat reed. You can kind of crimp your corners up, do both sides, and you can see your stakes are holding up better now. You're starting to create more of an upright shape, and the more rows you have, the more distinctive that will be. The pattern for this basket is sold on my website, Textile Indie. I've put the link in the description below if you want to follow along with the pattern and get the instructions and workshop for this project. This basket is nice because you can kind of play around with different reeds and do whatever pattern you like. Play around with different widths and textures and create a design that's unique to you. There's a lot of wiggle room in what you can create and the design and the pattern. I like to work in 3s and create rhythm by repeating things or creating asymmetry or symmetry depending on what I'm going for. So it's up to you what pattern you create. This basket I did or designed a specific pattern for my workshop. Another nice thing about this type of basket is that you can use shorter pieces and splice them together, so you weave multiple pieces per row by doing multiple start stops or 4 stake overlaps, so where you overlap 2 pieces, and that way you can use up shorter pieces without wasting them and still create a beautiful basket. Grab the 5/8 inch wide flat reed and a piece of the round reed. You want a piece that will go around the basket 2 times. Go ahead and dunk those in your water, and for these pieces, because the 5/8 inch wide is a little thicker and the round reed is a little bit more fragile, you'll want them to soak for about 30 seconds. Then you'll tap these off on your work surface, and this is going to be our cross stitch motif section. So as we've been doing, find the place where you started and ended. That is this side for me. I'm going to rotate a 1/4 turn, and this is the side I'm going to start on here. If you haven't noticed, I at some point stopped using clamps to hold my rows in place because they started holding themselves. If you notice that in your basket as well, if you feel comfortable, you can stop using the clamps to hold your rows in place. It's up to you and how comfortable you are with what's happening in your basket. So on this side, I'm going to begin with my 5/8 inch wide. So feel the surface. We're making sure we're using the right side facing out. Once again, grab your piece of round reed and fold it in half. Match the ends up together and then create a loop on the other end. For the X option that I'm going to do for this basket, you'll want to fold your round reed in half so that there's a loop in the middle, and then grab your 5/8 inch wide flat reed. Again, we're going to rotate a quarter turn from where we started and stopped that previous row. So find that point, rotate a quarter turn, and we're going to get this started. So I'm going to tuck under one, and then right here where this comes out, I'm going to loop this around the top or around the end of that 5/8 inch wide, and then clamp this on top here. So the end clamps on top of this second stake in from the side, and then my round reed starts right here. So for this, we're going to crisscross over the stake. So the stake's on the outside. We're going to crisscross here, move the 5/8 inch wide out of the way, bring the round reed out, and then bring these behind this next stake. So they're coming behind here like so. Then we'll float the 5/8 inch wide over this stake because this needs to be an over. Pull the round reed to the front, out of the way, go behind the next stake with your 5/8 inch wide, and then we're ready to do another X. So here we're going to create an X, pull the 5/8 inch wide in between those two pieces, bring the round reed behind this next stake, bring the flat reed flush with the basket, and then pull the round reed out of your way into your left hand. Bring the 5/8 inch behind a stake. I'm going to pull snug on the round reed so I don't end up with any extra loops or excess. Crisscross these two round reeds. Get the 5/8 inch pulled away, out of my way. Bring both round reeds behind the next stake, like so. Now we're going over with the flat reed here. So turn the corner, pull the round reeds out of your way, go under the next stake with your flat reed, create a crisscross, like so. Pull the 5/8 inch out of your way, or the flat reed out of your way, bring the round reed under the next stake, bring the flat reed flush with that stake, and bring the round reed out of your way, go behind this next stake, and then create an X here over this guy. Come on either side of the flat reed, go behind this next stake, go over that stake with the flat reed, and then move the round reed out of your way, bring the flat reed behind this stake right here. As you curve, make sure that you don't have too much of the flat reed because this is so much thicker. We want to make sure that we don't end up with too much where it's going to make your basket bulgy, or too little, it might pull your basket in. So make sure you curve around that corner to mimic the previous rows without pulling in or loosening up too much. So we're continuing that pattern. If you need to continue with the pattern, go ahead and rewind the video and keep mimicking this pattern until you've met where you started, and I'll show you how to finish it off. When you get back to where you've started, we want to overlap 4. So if you have an extra long piece, count 4 over and cut it to the far edge of that 4th stake so it goes to that. I'm going to be able to reach that just fine. So then you're going to come in with your straight tip packer, and we're covering this one, but we need to go under this guy. So I'm going to bring the straight tip packer under like this, take this end and slide it in like so. Make sure it comes all the way through, and then back up to the next one that I need to go under. I'm going to pull this end through like this, and then tuck this under, get it under this next X as well. Tuck it in, make sure that it slides all the way in so you don't end up with excess. So I've created a 4-stake overlap by sliding that underneath here. Now I need to create my last X. So I'm going to create my X, send this one that's lower into this space between the flat reed and that previous row. Tuck it inside the basket and bolt tight, and then the one on top comes into the basket like so. And then inside, you're going to come in, and both of these tails are going to slide through this loop that we started the round reed with. So pull it through, use your packer to make yourself some space. And then you can tuck it behind this weaver right here. So I'm going to cut it to the far edge of that weaver so that it'll tuck under and hide under there. And then lift this out of the way so I can tuck these ends behind that stake. Like so. And it might bubble out. You'll need to tuck it in a little bit more to make sure that you keep your X's tight on the outside. So the inside will look like this. And the outside has nice X's around the outside of the basket. Here on this part of the basket pattern, I'm using the grouping of 3 technique again, where I'm using 3 rows of the same type of reed to create a pattern or a mimicking of something I did previously in the basket pattern. And this adds rhythm and pattern to the walls of the basket, which the eye really enjoys repeating patterns. So as you're designing your baskets or weaving, it's good to think about design elements and design theory and what works and what doesn't. And that can take some experimentation and practice to see what you like, but also what works basket-wise. I would come in and pack your rows at this point to ensure that everything's nice and snug and positioned where you want it to be. We're getting taller on the walls of the basket. We only have a few more rows left, so we want to keep things nice and tight. The next row I have to do is a 1/2 inch wide flat reed row, and I'm going to work with 2 pieces to splice these together. If you want a refresher on splicing, be sure to check out the splicing video early in the workshop. Splicing is a great way to use up smaller pieces of reed so that you don't waste any reed. Reed can be kind of expensive sometimes, so it's nice to be able to use all the bits and pieces possible. So splicing allows you to do that. Now we're at the last row in weaving the walls of the basket, and that's going to be a 1/4 inch wide flat oval reed. And this reed is actually going to be a hidden row because we use this to sandwich the rim over top of this. So you won't actually see this in the design. We use a 1/4 inch wide because when we put the rim on, we're using 5/8 inch wide rim. And you want a piece of weaver in the basket and then room for seagrass to fit inside of the channel between the 2 pieces of the rim. And that will make more sense as we get there. I just wanted to let you know that this reed is going to be hidden once we start doing the rim. So this you'll weave in plain weave just as normal with the 4-stake overlap to finish it off. Subscribe and like this video to get more videos like this. If you're enjoying basket weaving with me, check out this video for more basketry content. Thanks so much for joining me in this cross-stitch basketry journey. I'll see you in the next video in this series. Check the description below for all the details. See you next time. Bye.